I'm going to start by putting down some ground cover right in this area here. I find it's better to work from the top down rather than from the bottom up, because when you sprinkle down the ground cover, it's going to kind of fall down the side here, and working from the top down sort of goes with the flow of gravity. I'm going to start by using my diluted white glue and just sprinkling it down on the area that I plan to work on. Don't need a lot right now. And then with my hand, I'll just sort of spread it around. And what this does is sort of just give a base layer of moisture and glue for the ground cover to stick to. And then once we're done putting all the ground cover down, we'll put another layer of glue on top. But this is just something to start with. Just like that. It doesn't have to be everywhere. And now what I'm going to do is take my blended turf earth blend from Woodland Scenics, and I like to pour a little bit in my hand, and then I just start sprinkling it on the area. It's pretty simple. Just sort of sprinkle it down, sort of like falling snow. Don't try to force it into any of the nooks and crannies, because you want to have it look natural. So I'm going to keep on sprinkling this ground cover on until I think it looks right. And what looks right really depends on your tastes. So just, keep sprinkling it slowly until you think it looks good. Okay, that looks good to me, so now let's move on to the next step. The next material that I might use is the fine turf earth blend. So I'll just put a little bit in my hand and just sprinkle that. The fine turf looks more like dirt than grass, so I'll just do little patches of it just so that the rock is not completely covered with grass. So it does have some patches of dirt and soil. And again, this is all about personal tastes. Do what you think looks right. And feel free to experiment. Okay, and next I'm going to go with some fine turf yellow grass. I use this pretty sparingly. I just sprinkle a little bit here and there just to give it a little yellow coloration. And then after that, I'm going to go with some coarse turf burnt grass. I like to lay this stuff down in little clumps. Okay, now I'm going to use some of this Brennan's Model Railroading undergrowth. I'm going to start off with the fine blend and just sort of sprinkle it down until I think it looks good. And this gives a sort of brown coloration, just kind of dead leaves, dead branches, other stuff that's on the ground. After that, I'm going to go with the coarse blend. Put some of that down. I like to make little pockets of this stuff, like that. And now I'm going to go with the full-size undergrowth from Brennan's Model Railroading. This is kind of the big variety of what I just put down. And just sprinkle that, put it in little pockets here and there, until you get something that looks good to you. Okay, this looks like a pretty good start. So what I'm going to do right now is put some more glue down so that this stuff stays in place. And then once the glue is dry, I'll assess the situation and decide if I want to add more to it. In order to put the glue down, I need to first hit this with a wetting agent. As I said before, the wetting agent that I'm going to use is isopropyl alcohol. Now, if you don't know what a wetting agent is, I made a video a long time ago explaining what a wetting agent is, so let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine and see what a wetting agent is all about.
If I put a little pile of ballast here, and then apply some of our diluted white glue to the ballast, you'll notice that instead of soaking into the ballast like we want it to, the glue beads up and runs off the side. And this creates a big mess, and it's not very fun. And that's because of surface tension. Surface tension is preventing the glue from soaking into the ballast the way we want it to. So to combat that, we use a wetting agent, which in this case is the isopropyl alcohol. So I'm going to make another pile of ballast over here. But before I put the white glue on it, I'm going to spray it with some isopropyl alcohol. And now when I apply the diluted white glue, you'll notice that it soaks right in. There's no running and there's no beating. And that's because the isopropyl alcohol has eliminated the surface tension problem.
Okay, so now that you know what a wetting agent is, I'm going to spray the isopropyl alcohol onto the scene. Just like that. Some of the scenery may fly off, but don't worry about it. It'll be okay. You just want to get a nice coat of whatever your wetting agent is, be it isopropyl alcohol or wet water. And once the scenery is wet, like it is now, we can then go and apply our diluted white glue. And there's no trick to this. All I'm going to do is just drip it on a little bit at a time and get the scenery nice and wet, nice and saturated with glue. Now the best way that I've found to do this when you're using a dropper like I am is to start at the high point and work your way down, because the glue will run down and you'll save yourself a little glue if you just let it run down and do some of the work for you. And just keep going like this until you've saturated all this scenery with glue. Now, as you're applying your glue, you may find that the glue runs down the rock face into areas that you're not ready to have glue in yet. If that happens, just set the glue aside and just take a paper towel and just soak up the excess glue. Okay, I've got the entire section of ground cover saturated with glue, so I'm going to go ahead and let this dry, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. I've let the glue dry and it's looking pretty good, and at this point I could leave it like this if I wanted to. I'm going to go ahead though and add a couple more layers just to give it a little more depth. I'm going to add some of this. This is the coarse turf conifer, and again I'll just pour a little bit in my hand, and I like to use this pretty sparingly as well. Okay, and I think I'd also like to add a little more yellow, so I'm going to add just a few more sprinkles of the fine turf yellow grass. Okay, and now I'm going to hit it with my wetting agent again, which is the isopropyl alcohol. And then I'll put some more white glue down on it. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll start adding some bushes and shrubs. To do the bushes, I like to use the Bushes Clump Foliage Forest Blend, as well as the Bushes Clump Foliage Olive Green. Now, to secure the bushes to the layout, you can either use straight white glue, or alternatively, you can use cyanoacrylate glue, which is basically super glue. As its name implies, the clump foliage comes in little clumps like this, and you just break it off and use it wherever you feel it looks good. So I'll take some of my white glue and I'll just maybe put a little bit here, and then I'll take a little tuft of this foliage stuff and do like that. And then maybe I'll put some over here. I like to put mine in little crevices or little dips in the terrain. I think they look more realistic that way. You may want to put it somewhere else. It just depends on what you like. If you want to use super glue instead of the white glue, it works the same way. Just put some of the super glue on the underside of the foliage, and then just apply it somewhere that looks good. I like using the super glue sometimes because it sort of gives you instant gratification. You don't have to wait for it to dry, it's ready to go right away.